Well, welcome to the Backroads Built podcast. I'm Ben, and this is part 2 of the Norval and Morrisseau fakes. And if you haven't listened to part 1, make sure you do, or else basically everything you hear in this episode will make absolutely no sense. So you'll want to make sure you have some context going into this one. So the link is in the description for those who want to check that one out first. And it was really hard to find a cut point for this. It was very difficult. It was either 25 minutes into an hour and a half conversation or kind of where we cut it, about an hour or so into that conversation. So we are going to be diving right back in. It's going to be more of a continuation. So just to give some context of where we left off with Cory, Cory was talking about asset defamation and how you can't tell somebody that they have a fake painting without being sued. And also Quebec, the fact that Quebec, they have an actual provincial division for fake art and assets and those kind of things. So the amount of fakes that pop up in Quebec are much, much lower. So Quebec is something that a lot of the fakes, the people who do these fakes, they just don't go near. However, they can still be sued federally. So it's not a full 100% thing there. We're going to be continue to talk about the struggles in this episode with asset defamation and how they can, again, hurt an artist's integrity. It's actually crazy what you can get away with in the eyes of the law. And when you hear it said out, you kind of go, that doesn't seem right. But it's a very interesting law. Cory, on top of that, him and his team have actually created an AI that can spot fake paintings. It's very accurate. It apparently works incredibly well, but they can't use it because of asset defamation. It's a never-ending loop. So let's get into it. Part 2 with Cory right now after a word from today's sponsor.
Hi, I'm Natasha Laframboise, sales representative with the Laframboise team at Realty Executives Local Group Inc. Brokerage. We are a local real estate team here in North Bay. Our team of sales representatives, Matt Laframboise, Phil Seguin, and Adam Legros, are ready to help you through the buying and selling experience. We have been providing service to the North Bay and area community for over 17 years. Our goal is to provide knowledge, support, and guidance in order to prepare your home for sale, bring it to market using multiple selling strategies, and get it sold. As a home buyer, we have 2 buyer's agents ready to help you find your home sweet home. If you'd like to know more, check us out on our website, laframboiseteam.ca. We are always happy to help.
Now, I've said to Cory in jest about having a Waldo museum with all the fakes and having some real originals, and it's not such a far-fetched idea because I continually ask him from time to time. There's no definitive answer about, and because in one of my stories I bought a fake of a fake to prove a point, so to speak. But in the print side, never mind the originals and the original fakes, there are, I don't know, perhaps hundreds of thousands of prints out there, and all the other stuff they tacked onto mugs and motifs here, there, and everywhere. So there's all that with regards to and maybe you want to talk about that a little bit about, again, cleaning up the mess. I can't even imagine. It's not like you take the mop out of the cupboard and the bucket. It's not that easy.
No. It goes back to the sheer lack of tools, right? And that we're going to be donating a reproduction to the Thunder Bay Police Department to hang in their detachment in honor of this historic event that they did. Now, that painting that we're going to be reproducing, the world has never seen, right? The world has never seen the painting behind me. And we haven't been able to show the world because every time we showed the world a new painting, which we have many to share with the world, that painting would get fake. A fake print would be made of that painting, and a fake print of the fake painting would be made. And because Canada is missing something that we're recommending for Canada, and Breskin and Parr are focused on this, that law firm is focused on this, is something called a rolling injunction. Now, my Da Vinci that I'm still trying to sell to your audience members, right? I have many of these. Many, 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 many. I'm so wealthy, and many, many, many. And so let's say somebody buys this from me, and then they want to challenge it that, hey, that's not a real Da Vinci. I got ripped off, right? They have to produce an injunction, for that sale, go through the courts. That's fine. I'll just roll this up, throw it away. I got many, many more. Many, many more. So again, in Canada, we are proposing something called a rolling injunction. And this will benefit all Canadian artists, especially when we're dealing also with third-party sellers such as Amazon, eBay, where you get into this whack-a-mole, right? You get into this whack-a-mole mode where, you got this fake print over here and you contact eBay and you fill out the damn form and it takes months and they ignore you, and then finally they pull the listing, and then 10 minutes later that another one's up with the same thing from a different, account, right? And then you got to start doing the process over again. So we need to get away from single itemized injunctions of narrow focus scope. And you get into what we are producing, a rolling injunction, where I acknowledge to the court, hey, this dude just identified 1,800 fake works. Here are the attributes of those fake works. Court says, I acknowledge you. Therefore, every time I see a fake painting come up with those attributes, I simply only have to add that to my rolling injunction. I don't have to create a new injunction. I don't have to create a new case. I shouldn't have to phone the local dispatchman and stuff. And think of that waste of resources that I'm going to phone 1,600. I even feel like doing it just to show them the point, and create 1,600 individual art fraud cases concurrently going on in Canada at the same time. What a waste of resources when they're telling me that they don't have any resources, right? And so we need to get into that rolling injunction structure.
Well, this, I think, segues into the AI and what you're doing there, because that would help that, would it not, to identify?
Yeah, because you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming there's no mark or anything that was put into these paintings to verify it at that time in history, right?
Well, the fraudsters had their own marks, not Norval's, and that's all part of the history behind this. But tell us about the AI and what you're doing there that will help going down the road.
Yeah, and there's a number of attributes in all the fraud rings, that they had in, and terribly again, Canada. Every time we went to court, the judge made us list the attribute, right? Well, they just learned and did them stop doing that, right? And did it better, right? And so, the multiple cases that we lost that are now obviously we found out, wait a minute, they're wrong. We were training the fraudsters with our information to produce better fakes, and again, we're so lucky, and so again, a very positive development out of this, and Canada needs to be proud of this, and the Canadian government needs to jump on board and help us with this. Is that we were contacted by a beautiful man named Stephen Helbrick, Clément, and these were high level computer scientist individuals, and they said, "Hey, we want to help. We want to help you," and so we just started creating an artificial intelligence to learn the attributes of how Norval painted. And the barrier for artificial intelligence to help in this field is the lack of data. And we were the golden egg in the fact that at the estate, we had a very robust collection that we could determine were absolutely real, because they never left our side. And as I mentioned, that's a huge crime that's happened because we have so much art that the world's never seen, such as this painting, to share with the world. And we couldn't because of the cloud over us. So these gentlemen, we had the real data, we had the real paintings to study, but then we also had 1,000 fake paintings to study. So we had the two sets of data. Now imagine going into a museum and saying, hey, I'm XYZ company. I want to do some AI. I want to, scan your Da Vinci. Go pound sand. Right? You're not touching our Da Vinci, right? Good luck, right? Good luck finding one person to let you do that, let alone 1,000.
Maybe you could
Right?
borrow
And
your
then,
painting.
yeah, you don't need to borrow my painting. Right? And then, yeah, I got more here. Right? And then to have 1,000 fake Da Vincis at the same time. And of course, a dark secret. A lot of museums don't want to know if their Da Vinci is real or not, to tell you the truth, because it's on their books as a giant asset. And so we were a golden egg because we had that data set to be able to train the AI. So Canada needs to be proud, Canadian government. We're always pushing technology and especially Indigenous inclusion in technology. Well, we have produced the first world ever AI art verification system through an Indigenous lens. And what is holding us back into helping the world with that, such as museums and galleries and even law enforcement? What is asset defamation, right? Because if even though we're talking in probability, and this is a very important part. The Kevin Hearn case, we lost because the judge said 50-50. Again, it goes to the defendant. It's a real Morrisseau. Kevin appealed, and Kevin won, not on the fact that the painting was fake, but that the gallery misrepresented the provenance. Now that hasn't reverberated around Canadian, that another first in Canadian history here, that a gallery was held accountable with damages for not securing the provenance of a painting and using that provenance to facilitate a sale. The lawyers, Jonathan Summer, especially help with Jay-Z and other individuals, were able to show that the provenance was made up. So the painting was real, but the provenance was fake. And so imagine all the galleries around the world that are in Canada, let's just say, that are selling paintings with, their provenance list, right? And referring back to that provenance as security that this thing is real. Now, that is challenging for them, and I acknowledge that, because how do you phone Mrs. Jones in England from 1950, who's already dead, and say, "Hey, did you own this painting? Can you confirm to me?" No, she's dead, right? And so provenance is such a slippery scope that it's really a farce in a lot of ways, right? It's a farce. Unless it's such an academic research curatorial provenance, right? Like rock solid. It's a farce. And so what the AI will be able to do is we won't be talking about provenance, we'll be talking about probability, right? We'll be talking about, and then so that will help indemnify all these galleries and museums and say, listen, I can't guarantee the provenance, but I can say that the AI felt that there was a 98% probability that this had positive attributes of a painting, and we can kind of focus on that. Now, the one thing that in the absurdity, and when I referenced that museum before that had that large collection coming in, that I had no real option. When I go to Mishcon de Rea and Aaron Taylor and I say, what can I tell these people? Right? Like, I feel terrible, right? My heart breaks. They love Morrisseau. I want to do a show, right? They say, tell them that you're very excited about the two painting. I'm very excited about two painting. That's all I can say. I'm very excited about two painting. And if they say, well, what about the other large X amount of paintings? Those paintings. And I have to say, the only thing I can say, the only thing is, I'm sorry, I don't have time right now to look at those other 50 paintings. I didn't say they're fake. I didn't say anything. I just said, I'm sorry, I'm too busy to look at them. I'm very excited about 2 of them. That's the state of that authentication process in Canada to get me away from asset defamation. Same with the AI right now. We have concerns. I'd love to say, hey, Canada, share this tool with the world. Hey, look what it would do for law enforcement, right? Look what it would do for all these entities. Even the individual person could just send us a picture, because right now we've gotten the AI so good that you can just take a picture with your phone, blink, send it to us. We'll be able to tell you with high probability or not. We can't help you because we could be sued for asset defamation by telling you even the probability if it's real or not, right?
I was thinking the other day during the sentencing, and I listened to Kevin Hearn from the Bare Naked Ladies, and then what I really thought about, his words were well chosen and heartfelt and all that good stuff, but then I thought about the hundreds and thousands of people that could say would like to say something, not knowing, some of them not knowing if they have fakes or not. So this next stage of cleaning up will be authentication based on AI, perhaps, or all those people who will just say, I don't know, I'll just keep it on my wall, and it's a Norval Morrisseau, and there'll be a period of time, I think, that people will just it's almost like I think we're going to go into a period of time where people will just not know, and maybe we'll stop talking about this because they don't want to face the truth, whatever truth or not.
No, absolutely. And I understand it. You love this painting. You spent a good amount of money on it. You don't want to feel that you got taken advantage. You don't want to feel that you have a fake painting that's stolen someone's culture and identity, and that it was probably produced by a serial convicted sex offender of Indigenous teen. I would not want that painting on my wall, right? I would not want it. So we have to do things in the forfeiture meeting coming up to either incentivize individuals. So we've thought about, donating a rare, limited edition print to the people who turn over the paintings. Who pays for that? Like if it costs us $150 to generate that print and ship it, times that by a couple thousand, right? Who's going to pay for that? We talked about, Canada allowing them to deduct it off their taxes, right? That we would say that, you spent this amount of money and so they can be incentivized to pull it over. We also, for the very first time in Canadian history, another first is that we trademark Norval Morrisseau's signature. And we did that to give us another tool in our toolbox. And again, we're building the plane in midair. Nobody knows what that does. Nobody, but I do know that if I see my trademark, his signature, I can tell you to remove it, right? So, okay, if you want to keep that painting that you paid for, you have to remove that trademark. That's our trademark. Keep the painting, but we have to identify it that this is not a Norval Morrisseau, and you have to remove our mark, or I'm going to sue you for dilution of my trademark. And that would be such a that would be such a poor conversation to have with somebody who's already been ripped off that loved Morrisseau's art, right? So we're trying to find positive incentive.
Yeah, that's been hit over the head twice, so to speak. What do you think Norval would think about this? You knew him, and you've told me stories about Norval and his spirituality, and based on all kinds of things in the natural world. What do you think he would think about, or you would not want him to think about this at all?
Actually, can I just piggyback off that super quick? Because it's kind of the same thing. But I was also wondering if Norval was still around today, could he actually Would it still be asset defamation if he went and said, that's not my painting?
Yeah, because we had numerous affidavits, right? Like we had many affidavits that this is a fake painting, and we were still sued for that fake painting. And then they attacked his mental capacity. They claimed that we were frauding. And everybody knows, Parkinson's doesn't diminish capacity. It severs the link between the world and that capacity. So Norval was very sharp of mind at the end of all days. His body just was not being able to exhibit it. And so we have reams and reams of affidavits that this is a fake painting, and they were still ignored under that ridiculous 50-50, it goes to the defendant rule.
I guess going back to your question, Bill. Sorry, I kind of piggybacked.
No. It's, again, what would Norval think about this?
Okay.
Would he? Yeah. What do you think?
I remember finding the first fake painting. I rolled Norval into a gallery, and we saw the painting, and you could tell, Norval Morrisseau's paintings don't play well with the others. Right? Like they're so dominant in color and power and energy. Like they got to stand on their own, or you have to complement it. You just can't put one up beside something else that just dominates it. So we walked into the gallery, we saw the domination on the wall, and we knew that it wasn't a real painting. And we the worker, the gallery owner came up and, oh, you like this painting? And Norval says to her, yeah, I wonder who painted it. And she says, oh, it's Norval Morrisseau. And she starts telling us about Norval Morrisseau, right? And then we don't let on, right? I roll him out, and we have a giggle, and then I get him back into the van, and I said, Norv, what do you want me to do about this? And he said, oh, don't worry about it, guy. Right? He said, you can't police the world, right? You can't, right? But that was just one. And he kind of said, if somebody needed to feed their family and forge my name, I'm not going to wish them ill, right? I'm sorry that someone maybe got ripped off, but I'm not going to wish them ill. He knew the struggles of some of these people.
He knew the true meaning of what he knew the true meaning of what a compliment was, and being kind.
Yes, and then we found 40, and then we found 200, and then we were like, okay, right, and they were being sold for pennies on the dollar, and then it was like, okay, we need to do something. Let's phone the police. All right, you're ignoring us. Let's do affidavits. Let's do the Heritage Society. And so Norval was extremely active in trying to identify and pushing us to help clean this up. At the end of all things, and I've told this to many people, especially Gabe Vadas, who is Norval's adopted son, and so much credit should go to him for enduring what he had to endure, and his family and what they had to endure. And now full vindication of what he was saying and his energies. And we are here today with all this stuff because of his street toughness, of his enduring nature. We are here with what he could have sold all this for pennies on the dollar and just forgotten about it and gone on and lived his life. He didn't need to endure this and carry all this, right? And Norval would have told him, listen, like, if this is too much, go fish, go do, forget about it, right? He would have forgiven us. And I said in my victim impact statement, and I'm not going to cry this time, but I said, like, I remember we were so poor that we had to go to my mother's house because they would buy us food and water. Because we couldn't sell a painting. All of a sudden, we were very comfortable before. We weren't lavish, but if we needed money, we would go to the river in the back and we would dip our cup in, right? And so we had all that we needed. And then all of a sudden this happened, and we couldn't sell a painting because they were selling for pennies on the dollar, and there was thousands of them. And the world and the government wasn't helping. The authorities weren't helping. so on and so forth. And we had to go, and my mother had to feed us, and I remember that day so explicitly. She came out, and she knew that what Norval must have been feeling, being at the end of his life, a life of struggle and fame, and Canada's greatest artist and all this, but having your hand out and dealing with Parkinson's. Um, and my mother said, like, I go to work so you can paint. So you go paint. And he said, okay, I'll go paint. And then I could tell Norval was upset. And I said, like, what do we want to do here? And he said, and he gave us forgiveness. He says, like, listen, this is not your fight. If you don't want to do this. And I said, no, but I almost swore again. I said, no,
It's all
we're
good.
gonna, yeah, and here we are, 27 years later. And so when people ask me, like, how do you feel and all this, when Voss got convicted, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything. It was just the next day. And now what does this mean? And so on this journey of cleaning up, oh my God, we're just at the beginning, right? We're just starting to get the tools from the Canadian government to do something about it.
I'm curious because we did talk about how Norval was, I wouldn't say ostracized, I don't think is the right word, but he was shunned by his people. How is he considered today in that kind of Indigenous culture? Is his impact felt there, or is there still a kind of a rocky relationship?
No, he's an icon. The vision that he had to do what he did and endear what he did, they realized that he was absolutely right. And every time we go into a school and we teach the Ojibwa culture to them through his arts, the Indigenous culture around the world, what it did to reflect onto for Canada to smarten up. No, he is their grand shaman. He is their spiritual and cultural icon. There's two schools named after Norval, if people didn't know that. Beautiful elementary schools. Um, we rejoice every time that we get to share his art. Um, Norval, Norval I remember it was like 1992 or something, and we were asked to participate in some politically charged demonstrations and so on and so forth. And Norval said to me, he said, Guy, um, it's hard enough to get people to the next step of mental evolution. They resist, but you can you can help them along to the next step. Getting to two steps is impossible. And Norval was always 2 or 3 steps ahead of where we are in Canada's conversations and construction. And even now, we have, as Bill rightfully said, Norval was a prolific writer, and we have hours of audio of him speaking his philosophies and his thought. We have huge amounts of his writings that we are trying to curate into palatable pieces that people can start studying, because Morrisseau was kind of lost to the academic world in 84 when he moved out west and went onto the street. They lost him. And then when we got off the street in 87 and he moved out to my small town of White Rock in 88, 89, where I met him, we were isolationists. We could tell that Norval was kind of done with battling that drunk narrative and all that. And he wanted to focus on his next chapter of his life, which was color therapy and universal themes. And all we didn't have a computer, we didn't have none of that. We didn't have a TV, we didn't even have a phone. We would get up in the morning. Norval would read books of other cultures and histories and spiritualities and art. And he would look for those universal connective tissues through all of humanity. And he would work on our philosophies, which we call Norbages. And we have about 50 of them that we've written down. And those Norbages and those lessons in the art that we haven't been able to share because of the art fraud. We're waiting for Canada Council of Art to give me some money so I can hire a curator to get this stuff curated so we can get it to the academic. Because the writings that I have here are 1 or 2 steps ahead of where we are in our conversations in Canada. And they're quite controversial. And I don't feel I don't feel right now to have the right to just say, well, damn it, let's just put them all online and let the world deal with it. I want to make sure that I get it to the elders of his nation. I want it to get to the academics. I want to do this in a proper way that we feel is in a proper way.
Well, we're going to get right back to Cory and this really fascinating story. But first, we do have to thank our one of today's sponsors, Twigs. And North Bay Echo is proud to partner with Twigs Coffee Roasters, a part of the community since 1995. Bill, it's one of your favorite places. How long have you been going there?
Yeah, no, there are Twigs locations in various communities, and I've been going there for a long, long time because, of course, on my phone I have, is it Twigs McEwen or Twigs Downtown? And I even know when I go through the drive-through, one of my favorites is the Montreal smoked meat on rye, and, of course, the salmon on a bagel along with the coffee and everything else. So I'm a great believer in supporting local retail and franchises, and so I'm so glad that we've got Twigs on the Backroads Bill podcast.
Yeah, Twigs offers a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. You can find your favorite specialty drink at our espresso bar, rejuvenate with freshly squeezed juice, or treat yourself to mouth-watering selections from our gourmet deli. What is your go-to drink, Bill?
Well, I kind of like the dark roast, but I was saying and ask for a scone to go with whatever the beverage is, to be sure.
I do have a good scone one here. Don't forget our resistible fresh baked goods, including uncompromising gluten-free options. Quickly about the scones. The raspberry ones are to die for. In the office, we have these things called scone bets. You make a bet. If you lose, the loser has to go and get scones. It's fantastic.
Your best bet is to go through the Twigs drive-thru or go into the restaurant
right down the street.
and have a seat.
Yep. So Twigs does have 5 locations, 2 of them here in North Bay, to serve you from North Bay to Sargent Falls to Sudbury. You can order online for pickup at twigs.ca. And coming soon, Bill, just for you, you'll be able to order fresh roasted coffee beans direct to your doorstep from our distribution center in North Bay.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we've got this on the Backroads Bill podcast.
So let's get right back into Cory because I know he's got a lot more stuff to say. So let's get back to it.
So in a previous conversation, I said to you, this will be the next book or documentary. And do you think that Norval, right from the get-go, when he started painting, having suffered the hurt, I mean, he loved his upbringing and understood it very well, but he had to endure a lot in his lifetime, good, bad, or indifferent. But do you think he knew this was his journey? Did he ever talk about that this was this is what he was meant to do?
Yeah, I referenced it at the very opening, kind of not very coherent talk at the beginning of this conversation. We have always understood that this is a plan by the Great Spirit. And Norval would say, this is just my hand, just my name. But thousands of people have been a part of this weave. I am a part of this weave. People look at me sideways when I say, no, when I met Norval Morrisseau in 1989, I knew that day that this is where I was supposed to be, even though I had no idea who Norval was for like 2 years. No idea. No idea what I was dealing with whatsoever. But I knew I was supposed to be there and help. And I came from an upper middle class environment. And then so my mother would be like, Cory, why are you living on the reserve 8 blocks from your fancy house with your private bathroom and all this stuff? And you're living on the reserve with no food and no water, helping this, you know, old kind of crazy guy make art. Right? Like like and so when I tell people this is my destiny, in this seat right now, this is what I'm meant to do on this planet.
Exactly. And as we kind of wind things up and tie things together, this is part of I'm part of that weave too. Who knew that I was going to do this, and how I kind of all of a sudden thought, oh, I got to look into this, because I know I've been to Red Lake. I've seen Norval Morrisseau's, I've seen originals, and I've seen fakes, and then being bold enough, as I said earlier, buying a fake of a fake and putting that in the story, and now having it's obvious that you should be on the podcast, but just staying, I guess, having my hand on the pulse of Norval Morrisseau, who I didn't have the privilege of knowing, only through what I've learned, and thinking to myself, there needs to be more exposure. So in doing my little part to do whatever I can do to tell this story, because we've heard today, Ben, about the bigger story of how all artists need to be helped, how the laws have to be changed, and how Canada is not the same as France and Germany. And I think we'll just maybe transition, Cory, as we normally do on the Backroads Bill podcast. Any last thoughts or things that you wanted to say or didn't get a chance to say?
My goodness. And you're right, Bill. Ben is. Everybody that gave Norval Morrisseau a sandwich, everybody who gave him a ride, everybody who helped him, that one hand. I always reference, the gentleman who found him unconscious, in the middle of the winter, dying of hypothermia. And the gentleman said something jumped in my mind and said, drive back and find that guy. And if whatever didn't jump into that mind's man, that we would have lost Norval Morrisseau. And so I tell everybody, and I tell the authorities when I talk to them, you are now part of this. You will be in history books. You will be in the movie. You will be in. We walk in history right now. So yes, everybody is in this giant weave, and that weave is to take those norbages, take those lessons from that indigenous culture, and implement them into the consciousness of the human psyche, so that we can save this world. That we are all just energetic beings, interdependent and interconnected with everything. Things that I'd like to say. We did our first ever again. like like the show in 1960, the first ever indigenous show. And then 2006, the first ever indigenous solo exhibition of an indigenous artist in the National Gallery, any national gallery in the world. 2006 that happened, not 1906, right? Ridiculous. But it happened. And here we are, another first. We just did our very first indigenous exhibition in a major church at the Metropolitan United Church in downtown Toronto, who we are working very closely with those people. They are good people. I am not a religious person raised by Norval, deep spiritual person. But these people, as Norval would always say, if we could just get the damn Christians to do what they're supposed to do, we'd be a lot better off, right? And there are very good Christians doing the work of Christ's words, who Norval loved. Norval loved Jesus Christ. He loved him, and believed in his words, and saw similarities in his words and the indigenous culture's work. And so the Metropolitan United Church, these people are doing that good work. We need to hold them up. But also, what we're producing with them is we're trying to create a language of spirituality for humanity. And we're working also with Mishnabbe Cree Business Corporation on hopefully producing a 24-story cultural center building in downtown Toronto on the church's property to show, wow, you have an Indigenous cultural exhibition event center amongst on the church, with the cornerstone of that church laid by Edgar Ryerson, the gentleman who created the residential school program. And so we're going to show the world that we can hold hands and go into the future. That's very important. We talked about the AI. I think the last thing that I'd like to say that, and maybe it's because we're in a political kind of election coming up. We're an Indigenous organization. I'm a Scandinavian man. I don't pretend to be Indigenous. I'm full Viking. But I've dedicated my life to this. And maybe because we're in that political world right now, we need the government to come forward, right? We need these entities to help. This is the time to do this. This is the time to act. We need their help. We believe in the Liberal government effort that they've undergone. We're very close, I think, to getting artist resale right, which is an extremely important topic. Also, maybe we can talk about one time. But what we need the government to realize is how dangerous of an entity the Norval Morrisseau estate is. And I say that in a very cheeky way, But we have in our hands, we have the reputation of so many of our institutions, museums, and universities that we could call out and say, you got a bunch of fakes in there and you've been ignoring us for so many years. That's your reputation, right? We have evidence of documentation of 1,000 fake paintings being sold through auction market, where some auctions have sold in the 50s of fake paintings. We could do damage if we release that documentation of the Canadian secondary market and show unfaith in that, right? One very important thing, and I'm sorry that I'm going on with this last conversation, this last question. The fraudsters did a series of paintings, and they're not deemed fake yet. And these paintings have titles called Father Raping Me, Priest Stealing My Virginity. And they're paintings of Norval being sodomized by a priest or in some other sexual deviant act. Now, Norval Morrisseau didn't paint those paintings, right? How do we get those off the market? Because essentially what happens, as these fraudsters have, that we really didn't delve into all their different departments that they had, they were donating paintings because they needed to reinforce a false reality. So if I could get a painting, and we have the video of our finance minister standing in front of a fake Morrisseau painting, there's a fake Morrisseau in the Ontario Legislative Building, and it's there because we have terrible legislation about fake painting. The irony is just impalatable, right? But we so they donate these paintings to lend verification to that alternate reality. So the estate is absolutely so dangerous, and because you have these terrible Father Raping Me paintings that if we don't get that off the market, someone will just down the road, when I'm long and I'm dust, it'll get donated or somebody will study it, and it will go down in the lexicon of history that Norval Morrisseau painted this painting of him being raped by a father, right? And what that does, what Canada doesn't understand, is that we own the copyright of every single painting. We own the image of every single painting. Make no mistake. You own the painting, we own the image. And so Canada doesn't get it, that you are forcing property onto me. I am saying no. The estate is saying no. That is not our property. We do not own the property of Norval getting raped by a priest. That is not ours. And the court says, yes, it is, 50-50. And so imagine being forced property upon you. And then so, again, in the danger of us, because I'll share with your listeners, again, something very special with them, that we have a very large collection of paintings, and I'll be very controversial here, but I wish to get a phone call about it so we can discuss it. We have a very large collection of paintings by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and they are horrific. It's a series called My Personal Desires. They're horrific. It's Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and he's painted himself killing cats and just all types of horrible stuff. You never would imagine Pierre, but nobody saw him paint them. 50-50. The real Pierre Elliott Trudeau painting. And if Justin says, my dad didn't paint those paintings, I'm going to sue him for asset defamation. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and donate all these paintings to the leading institutions around the world. And then I'm going to sponsor some PhD theses on Pierre Elliott Trudeau and how he liked to eat cats. Terrible.
And it's a point well taken. I'll go back to a few words there from a few minutes ago, that this is this is the first time something significant on the Backroads Bill podcast, but let's not make it the last time, and we'll come back at another time, Ben. And any last words from you? Yeah, no, this has been absolutely mind-blowing, because going into this isn't about fraud. It is, but it's much deeper than that. It's about culture and obviously the lack of infrastructure legally that Canada has, and how it's fallen behind the times, or I guess hasn't had the, as you said, Cory, it's not old enough to really have all of these fraud these fraud laws. So I've learned so much in this, because going into it, like, I had a very little understanding, but very mind-blowing. So Cory, thank you so much. If there's anything that this podcast does, is it that this episode, or it'll be 2 episodes because we're about an hour and 40 minutes in here. If it in any way can shine a light to some people about the issues that you and your estate are going, and all people in the art community have to go through from a legal perspective, that's all we can really ask. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you, boys. Again, we learned from Morrisseau. Yes, we could go to Germany and with very quickly, but we are here for Canada. We are going to change Canada for the betterment of Canada. So your guys' spotlighting on it, thank you very much for the attention. And we need to keep shining it, right?
We do. What's the name of that painting? Can you tell us behind?
I cannot. I cannot. No, because I don't need somebody painting it, making a fake and naming it. So actually, just for clarification, as you said earlier, we're looking at a never seen before Morrisseau, correct? That is correct.
Wow.
The world has never seen this, and I'll have to say, I have very large hands, right? That's a large painting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a large painting. It goes out and up and so forth. Yeah,
it's a good way to transition to the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, boys. Appreciate you.
Well, all I can say is, wow, my mind was absolutely blown throughout the whole episode. It was like getting chills. Just, I didn't know it ran this deep. I knew of Norval because Bill talked about him a lot. He's somebody who Bill is very fond of his paintings and his story. I actually had no idea it went this far. Not just from the struggles he went through, but the legislation that we have in Canada and what they have to go through. And it's kind of scary, being an artist and having stuff, you don't even need to be an artist, but just the stuff you can kind of get away with in the eyes of the law. It's going to be very interesting to see how Cory and his team are able to potentially update the law to something that makes a little bit more sense. in today's world. So we wanted to say a big, big thank you to Cory for giving us over 90 minutes of his time, for you, the listener, who sat for over 2 hours almost of the Backroads Bill podcast to cover this. I hope you got as much out of it as we did. It was very, very interesting. My hope is we will actually have Cory back on once they change the legislation or they're able to make some progress there. That would be an immense victory for not just the Morrisseau estate, but for every artist. So hopefully we get to have him back on this podcast for a part 3. That'd be awesome. So if you want more Backroads Bill podcast, you can check us out on all of your favorite podcast platforms. The video version, of course, is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And of course, we're always available on NorthBayEcho.ca. And while you're there, you can check out all the other great podcasts we offer. And of course, sign up for our newsletter, Echo Essentials. It is free. It curates all of the newest podcasts on our networks, events and news that are happening in the North Bay area. And you can get started at NorthBayEcho.ca. So join us again next week as me and Bill are going to take you to the back roads to find out what the best fall destination road trips are in Ontario.